Yeah, we are very comfortable this time because we made so many tests and the car feels so good over the distances, and it was very good always. We almost finished all our distance, and that means we're looking forward for the race.
The big surprise of qualifying came from the Dave Price Paynos team. David Brabham and Perry McCarthy dug deep late in the session and planted the Reynard-designed car with its rumbling Ford V8 on the front row, next to the mighty Mercedes.
Second on the grid, you must be absolutely chuffed to bits.
Yeah, pretty pleased about it, actually. It's, I think we've certainly shaken the establishment of Mercedes and the works BMWs and McLaren and Porsche and everybody. So it's great. It's fantastic for the team.
David Brabham will be on board the Paynos for the start. He's very experienced, but there's no shortage of advice either, with his dad spectating.
Dave was pretty good in the wet. Only thing, I'm not sure he's on the right tyres for the wet, mind you, but I think he'll go pretty well, actually, yeah.
Also turning a few heads on its first appearance in the series is the Parabolica McLaren of the Brits Gary Ailes and Chris Goodwin. They'll start from row 4.
I think we've actually got a very good chance. We're a good pair, and we can both run the same times, which is important in this long-distance racing. You both have to be on the pace, and I think we're where we are. So I think providing we keep it all together and there's no dramas, then yes, we have a good chance of getting a result.
I think we've surprised a lot of people by how quickly we got onto the pace, and we've got quite a few more things in store as well to improve the car. Maybe that might see us creep up a bit further than where we are already.
The two BMW McLarens will start from row 2. Steve Soper and JJ Leto were planning on a front row spot, but were caught out in practice by the unpredictable weather.
Neither of us are very happy. The plan went completely wrong. We basically were saving it until the last 15 minutes, which we had one good set of qualifiers and one set of qualifiers with one lap on, and JJ was going to do the qualifying. It obviously rained, so that blew us out of the equation. But I mean, we were hoping for something better than that, obviously.
They fared better than Jean-Marc Gounon, who destroyed his Gulf McLaren in the warm-up. So teammate Pierre-Henri Raffanel will share the Ray Belm Andrew Gilbert Scott car back on the 7th row.
I think you'll find there's probably very few relaxed faces, because with the weather like this, it does make it incredibly difficult. We've changed our car completely overnight, because although the car was very pleasant to drive, we just didn't feel it's quick enough. I feel confident that we certainly shouldn't be where we are on the grid.
Thanks to the weather, the Tommy Archer Justin Bell Viper starts 29th, but they have a secret weapon.
Snow tires. That's about it. I mean, I don't know. It is such a lottery, as you've seen, in that since we went out at 8:45 this morning in warm-up, it's been changing every 10 minutes, so it's going to be a complete lottery.
So this really is anybody's race. The sun's out, but the track is wet. The car's on their way round to the start now. Let's join Simon in the commentary box.
And it's a rolling start. Mercedes and Paynos row 1, McLaren's row 2, Mercedes and McLaren row 3, and as they come round onto the start-finish straight, the race is on. 47 magnificent GT supercars with Schneider's Mercedes leading into Copse. Then the Paynos in 2nd place, the two BMW McLarens. The other Mercedes is in 5th place, and off goes the Porsche GT1 of Emmanuel Collard. Still the GT2 cars crossing the start-finish line on this huge grid, but already the magnificent Mercedes is pulling away, with the Paynos in a tremendous 2nd place. Then the rest of the field funneling through Beckett's and on to Chapel Curve. The Mercedes is on the Hangar Straight now. The Paynos with his headlights on. That's David Brabham, but Bernd Schneider with the car dancing about a fair bit on the bumps. There's a lot of water on the track, a lot of surface water still as he slides through Stowe Corner, goes on towards Club, and look at the lead that Mercedes has. The Paynos still 2nd, then the two BMW-powered McLarens 3rd and 4th, then Alessandro Nannini and the other Mercedes, there he is in 5th place, and a whole phalanx of McLarens following through, but an enormous lead for Bernd Schneider already, out of Club Corner, up towards Abbey Curve. It's It's David Brabham in the Paynos in second place. Then the two BMW McLarens with JJ Leto leading Peter Cox. Then Alessandro Nannini's Mercedes. Then John Nielsen's McLaren. Oh, and going off is the Parabolica McLaren. Just a glimpse there of Gary Ailes going way off. And now he comes back on. Doesn't seem to have damaged the car any, but he's lost an awful lot of places in that superbly brightly turned out car. There's the Paynos in second place. What an unmistakable silhouette, a front-engine car, of course, and an unmistakable exhaust note. And this superb Mercedes going through Woodcote, shaving a tight apex as he goes onto the start-finish straight. And he has almost completely empty road behind him all the way down that straight before we get the second place Paynos. And JJ Leto is attacking, but there's a yellow flag. He's not allowed to overtake under a yellow, so he hangs back. And there is another Porsche in the gravel, two more Porsches in the gravel. And we're travelling now with Andrew Gilbert-Scott. This is a replay, and watch the red and white Porsche clout him and then spin round. That's Emmanuel Collard on the first corner of the first lap, and Andrew Gilbert-Scott has a little glance across and motors on his way in the McLaren. This is what it looked like from the Viper, one of the Vipers a little bit further back, and you can see the Chamozzle going on ahead. That's the Viper, which is leading the GT2 class, and still the Paynos in second place with headlights blazing behind it of these two BMW McLarens as JJ Leto and Peter Cox strive to get close. They won't want to lose touch with that leading Mercedes, but in fact they seem already to have done so, because Bernd Schneider's lead is getting longer and longer by the minute, and still David Brabham clinging to the dry line on the Paynos. A lot of straight line power with this big V8 powered machine, and he's holding off the V12 McLarens. I wonder for how much longer as they go down the Hanger Straight. JJ Leto pulls onto the inside and goes easily through at Stowe Corner, and David Brabham lets him go. It's a long race, a 4-hour race, and he can afford to let him go. But there's a Mercedes elbowing through too. That's Alessandro Nannini, who's come past Peter Cox and has gone up to 4th place. So it's Mercedes, McLaren, Paynos, Mercedes, McLaren. That's the top 5. Alessandro Nannini storming on because he certainly won't want to lose touch with the hair of this race, which is his teammate. And now the Mercedes attacks the Paynos as well, weaves a little bit under braking, but gets ahead going into Abbey Curve. So now the Mercedes of Nannini is third. The Mercedes of Schneider leads, the McLaren of JJ Leto is second, and the McLaren of Peter Cox is in 5th place, still behind the Paynos. In the pits, another Paynos. This is Andy Wallace. He doesn't look happy, but there's Brabham bringing the 3rd place Paynos in. I think they've got the slick tyres ready for him. It is drying out, because you can see now there's very much a dry line. Only a few puddles left, but a weave there, a big weave from Bernd Schneider as he fights through the puddles. Somebody going very slowly in a GT2 Porsche. And into the pits comes the Schiatarella Lotus, I assume for slick tyres. And we've now got in the pit lane the two leaders. We've got the Mercedes coming in, and we've got JJ Leto coming in. There is the Mercedes, and behind him is Leto, the leader, and the 2nd place Mercedes, both in the pit lane. And the slick tyres are ready. They don't look like slicks, actually. I think they're putting intermediate tyres on that car. So it looks like intermediates for Bernd Schneider. They change his tyres. I can't see from here what is going on the McLaren, but certainly the other cars were on slicks. Intermediates on that Mercedes. There we see slicks. Slicks on the JJ Leto McLaren. They're all making their own bit of weather forecasting, but one of the Paynoses is out. Andy Wallace is retired, and Andy Wallace isn't happy.
Every single time we run, the engine's misfiring or blowing up or whatever. We can't. I mean, it's squandering a really good chance to go out and win races because the chassis is great.
Jan Lammers is in the lead now because of all these pit stops. The yellow Lotus, you can see it at the front of that trio. That yellow Lotus driven by the two Dutchmen. Jan Lammers at the wheel at the moment. Mike Hesselman's waiting to take over. That car is still on wet weather tyres, and Jan Lammers leads the race here at Silverstone. John Nielsen in the blue and red Gulf McLaren is now second. Peter Cox in the BMW entered McLaren is in 3rd place. But Jan Lammers, the little ex-Formula 1 driver, one of Holland's greatest, loves these sports cars and is really charging. The McLarens should be a lot quicker than him. They're winding him in on what is still a greasy surface, and I would think that Jan Lammers can't stay out on his wet weather tyres for very much longer, unless, of course, the weather changes. Peter Cox having a little nibble there at John Nielsen. The two McLarens running very, very closely indeed. Jan Lammers about to be held up by a GT2 Porsche, and that's going to let the McLarens get a bit closer as they go through the Beckett complex to Chapel Curve and on to the Hangar Straight. Lammers 1, Nielsen 2, Cox 3, and now Lammers... Oh, Lammers isn't going past that. I think Lammers is in trouble. Lammers slows, Lammers loses the lead. It's now Nielsen leading. It's Peter Cox into second place. I don't know what's happened to Jan Lammers' Lotus, but just as we were watching it, the car seemed almost to die. And I think Lammers is in trouble. We've got McLarens 1 and 2, and we're riding with Andrew Gilbert-Scott. Down through the gearbox as he turns into Abbey Curve and then accelerates out and into the pit lane. We've now got those two leading McLarens. Peter Cox, in fact, coming into the pit lane just in front of John Nielsen. They must have swapped places just as they came into the pits. So once more, the race order changes as into the pits they come. Clean the windscreen. What's going to go on? They're refueling it, and you're not allowed to change the tyres until you finish refueling. There's one of the Vipers in as well, but on go, I think, slick tyres. Pretty sure they were slicks, and he accelerates out, and John Nielsen's pit have got him out before Peter Cox's. So John Nielsen retakes the lead in that particular battle, although, of course, they've both lost the lead. Out on the circuit, it's now Porsches 1 and 2. Pedro Lami's Porsche, there it is, just running ahead of one of the Vipers, is in the lead, and in second place the similar GT1 Porsche of Ralph Kellener's and Yannick Dalmas, following him through the G2 traffic. They're just coming up against the bright yellow Marcos, another front engine car, a very dramatic looking machine about to be swallowed up by Pedro Lami's Lotus. That's the Marcos. Lamy goes inside the Marcos, and following through is Ralph Kellener's. So Porsche's now 1 and 2, but there's a McLaren coming back up again. That's JJ Leto, and Pedro Lamy is caught by JJ Leto. He's blocked by the Scatarella Lotus briefly, but the McLaren is now back on the Porsche's tail, making up time after its pit stop. Porsche 1, McLaren 2, and if you look behind there, the silver car coming into the picture in third place is the Bernd Schneider Mercedes, now being driven by Alex Wurz, his co-driver. So it's Porsche, McLaren and Mercedes, but it's now McLaren, Porsche, Mercedes, because JJ Leto's gone ahead, and look at Alex Wurz trying to get past the Pedro Lamy Lotus, and he does so, storms up the inside coming into Abbey. So the tremendous speed of these V12 supercars has taken Leto back into the lead, has got Wurz up into second place. Lamy still is in third place. There is Leto, headlights ablaze, going through Woodcote in the McLaren. Now, this is what happened to Alexander Wurz just after he'd taken over from Bernd Schneider, put the car right off the road, across the gravel, over the grass, bouncing over the bumps. Miraculously, he got it back onto the tarmac, because he would have been a very bad boy as far as Mercedes-Benz were concerned if he'd damaged that car. And it's very busy in the pits now, and the reason is it's started to rain again. Not only that, but the sky is very black indeed. Here's Peter Cox bringing in the number 9 McLaren. Roberto Ravaglia is ready to take over that car, gets into the centre seat of the car. They clean the windscreen, and the tyres are going on. Treaded wet weather tyres, of course. They've refueled the car already. On go the headlights. It's off the jacks. Let's hear from Peter Cox.
By the way the conditions are, you know, you can easily win the race or lose the race through this condition, and it's really a bit of a shame, you know, for everybody, because it's really a gamble. You know, if you have one change, you can maybe anticipate a little bit earlier or later and have it just right, but by this it's just pure luck, really.
What he means is that the weather isn't staying the same. Here it is now absolutely pelting, and then we'll get a little bit of sunshine on the other side of the circuit. That's one of the GT2 Vipers, which are dominating the GT2 category. Bertrand Gache on Olivier Beretta leading, and it's Tommy Archer and Justin Bell in second place. But now here's the battle for the lead, because we've got Steve Soper in the McLaren that was started by JJ Leto. We've got Roberto Ravaglia in the McLaren that was started by Peter Cox, and they're working their way through among the Porsches, GT1 and GT2. There's the Paynos, which is now well down the field with Perry McCarthy and David Brabham. But these two McLarens are on the same lap. They're battling over the lead. And Steve Soper, a man who, of course, knows his way around Silverstone very well indeed, on the tail now of the Paynos and about to lap it as they come through Bridge and into Prairie. And they both that go past that Paynos do the two FINA BMW McLarens. And they are looking very, very steady indeed, as the rain seems to ebb away a little bit, and now the drivers can find a little bit more grip. But they know that the weather isn't going to stay constant. It's changing absolutely all the time. Headlights on to tell the slower cars that they're coming through. Very much a feature of long-distance GT racing is being able to cope with the traffic. A lot of slower cars. Oh, and look at that Lotus moving across on Steve Soper. He was trying to go round the GT2 Porsche in front of him. Don't think he saw Steve Soper. And there's Roberto Ravaglia going between the Lotus and the GT2 Porsche. And in the pits, the number one Gulf car's in for tyres and fuel. Pierre-Henri Raffanel taking over. And Perry McCarthy's taken over the Paynos from David Brabham.
I could hold first few laps with them, but then the tyres just went off. The tyres that we have are just too soft, and the other ones are just too hard, so we just don't have any wet tyres at the moment. And I came in for intermediate tyre, which I thought was a good move, and the engine just wouldn't start. So every time we come in, the ECU box just gets so hot, it just won't start. You have to wait till it cools down and goes, so very disappointing, really.
Here's the other Gulf McLaren coming in, Thomas Bashir. He's had it off, he's not at all happy. There's a lot of gravel and muck underneath the car. They're scraping it all out, cleaning out the gravel from the air intakes, giving him a fresh set of tyres. Of course, it's still so slippery out there. And in the gravel is James Kay with the Mustang, and he's just digging himself in deeper with that big American Mustang. Meanwhile, Steve Soper goes past a slithering GT2 Porsche at Luffield. Roberto Ravaglia still following him. It's these McLarens 1 and 2, and always the worry about the traffic. Third is the Mercedes of Alessandro Nannini and Marcel Thiemann. In fourth place, the other Mercedes, the early leader of Schneider and Wurz. There's Gary Ailes and Tony Goodwin with their Parabolica McLaren, and in sixth place the Raffanel, Belm, Andrew Gilbert Scott McLaren. Off though is one of the GT1s, that's Yannick Dalmas off. Let's see what happened to him. We're getting a replay, bang into the barriers very, very heavily. That's got to be the end of Yannick Dalmas's race, I would think. They were in ninth place, and it's still raining some of the time and not raining some of the time. Ravaglia's McLaren chasing now the leading Viper. Headlights on in the murk, and it's starting to come down again once more. So the rain returns, and this is the Thierry Boots and Hans Stuck Porsche getting it all wrong. They started 15th, they've been moving up through the field, but they're going way off course. The car comes straight without hitting anything, but the news now is that we've got a new leader. This McLaren, this brightly painted Parabolica car with two British drivers, has now come to the head of the heap. Chris Goodwin in the car he's sharing with Gary Ailes leads. The McLaren in second place is Pierre-Henri Raffanel. That's the Gulf car. The Mercedes of Bernd Schneider and Alex Wurz is third. In fourth place is the Peter Cox McLaren, and the second Mercedes is now in the pits. The Alessandro Nannini Mercedes in the pits with problems, and that's promoted Steve Soper back up to fifth place with his McLaren. It's the second place McLaren. We've now got four McLarens in the top five, with only the third place Mercedes breaking the run of McLaren BMWs at this moment, and the sun's come out again. We've actually got a bit of sunshine, even though it's still very wet in the pits, as Chris Goodwin brings that car in to hand over to Gary Ailes. The Parabolica crew go into action. In gets Gary Ailes, out gets Chris Goodwin, and I think he can feel extremely pleased with his afternoon's work so far.
I like the brakes on at about lap 2 because we fitted new brakes that weren't bedded in properly. My mistake, but we made the places up, and hopefully this last part of the race we can keep up there. It's going all right. It's going well.
So after that routine stop, it's the Raffanel McLaren back in the lead, and this car, now driven by Alex Wurz, the Mercedes, is now up into second place, but there's still a very long way to go. Than ever now here at Silverstone. And Alex Wurz, look at him sliding that Mercedes, struggling for grip, but he's in the lead because the Raffinel, Belm, Gilbert Scott McLaren is in the pits for a routine stop. Mercedes therefore back in the lead, and he's catching up that extraordinary little blue Morgan, an incredible car of a much earlier era, driven by Charles Morgan, the grandson of the founder, and Bill Wickham. And as he squeezes through on the inside, Morgan doesn't give him an awful lot of room. Oh, and look, there's a Panos off as well. A lot of action there. That is Perry McCarthy going off in the Panos. They're down in 16th place now. And I'm wondering if that Mercedes is on the intermediate tyres, because he seems to be having terrible trouble controlling the car. And there's the Mauro Martini Lotus, which seems to have come to a halt. I didn't see whether it spun or simply ground to a technical halt. But Wurz pressing on despite his trouble, apparently, with grip. He's storming through the traffic, and here there's a bit of a dry line, as you can see. He is very careful to try and make sure he keeps the Mercedes on the slightly drier line and off the really slippery, really reflective mirror-like surface off that line where it's very, very slippery indeed. That's Justin Bell. His Viper is in second place in GT2. Viper's still doing well in this class because Philippe Gache and Olivier Beretta are leading that class. Justin Bell actually closing on them a little bit at the moment. And in comes Alex Wurz finally. He's coming in, and I am sure they're going to put some slightly more suitable tyres on that Mercedes. And that means, of course, that he's going to lose the lead, and we've got the Pierre-Henri Raffinel, Ray Belm, Andrew Gilbert Scott McLaren back in the lead now. The lead changing constantly here, as indeed is the weather, and that's a Viper spinning way off. Oh, thump into the bank and back, spinning across the track right in front of the rest of the traffic. That was Jari Nurmanen's Viper. There's a GT2 Porsche off. It's pouring with rain now. That same Mustang has gone off. We've got yellow flags, as if the drivers needed to be reminded that the conditions are now becoming absolutely impossible. It's pelting with rain. The track is completely flooded. The cars are travelling at very much reduced speed. I don't think I've ever seen in 40 years of coming to Silverstone flooding quite like this. It's absolutely dreadful, and even though the rain once more has eased, the circuit is like a lake. That's Pedro Lami's GT1 Porsche. He's off now, dug deep into the gravel, and still it's so wet that the speeds are getting lower and lower, and still the cars seem to have no grip. That's Gerd Ruch in the short-tailed McLaren. It's like a powerboat. I mean, that's not a racing car, it's a boat. In fact, the little GT2 Porsche is able to go quicker, with the leading McLaren coming up behind him rather cautiously. That's Pierre-Henri Raffinel once more. And now the safety car's coming out. Well, I'm not surprised. I don't know whether that's purely because of the conditions or because they've got to clear some of the stranded cars out of the gravel. But out comes the safety car once more. Once again, the cars all have to queue up behind it and hold position while the safety car takes them round. And look at that, that's the pit lane, and it's completely flooded. The track isn't much better, and I wonder if really this race can be allowed to continue. But the safety car is taking them all round. The marshals are working as fast as they can to drag these cars out of the various gravel traps. In fact, that's the Pedro Lamy Porsche, isn't it, being moved out. You can see how that thick gravel does a very good job of slowing down an errant racing car. Meanwhile, behind the safety car, Peter Cox and Pierre-Henri Raffinel, first and second in their McLarens. The silver Mercedes, a few cars back, is the third-placed car of Bernd Schneider, and the brightly coloured McLaren, you just got a glimpse of it there, the Parabolica car, driven now by Gary Ailes, is in fourth place. The weather's getting worse and worse. There's now a torrential deluge, and into the pits now has to come that McLaren. But Pierre-Henri Raffinel coming in for a driver change because he's now done the maximum amount of time in that car he's allowed to do by the regulations, and the safety car pulls off. Amazingly, this race is on once again. The track is as flooded as ever. It's still pouring with rain. We've still got 45 minutes of this race to run, but there is Peter Cox. Oh, and he nearly goes off the road. Quite extraordinary. He's coming down the straight and the car almost getting away from him, but he's gathered it back together again. The green flag says the race is on. People are creeping round, But Peter Cox fishtailing down the straight, 600 horsepower of V12 BMW in the back of that McLaren. It's not an easy car to drive, even in the dry. And in these conditions, it must be almost impossible as he comes down the Hangar Straight, comes down to Stowe Corner. The track is absolutely awash, turns into Stowe Corner. The car once more weaving. He's fighting for control, but he knows he's got to keep the pressure on because the Mercedes of Bernd Schneider is pursuing him. There's the Parabolica McLaren in the pits. It's a routine stop. That's dropped them to 6th, but they're still well placed. But look at this battle we've got on for the lead, because now the McLaren of Peter Cox has the Mercedes of Bernd Schneider in its mirrors, and despite the terrifying conditions, these two are fighting for victory here at Silverstone. Look at the speed of these high-geared windscreen wipers shoveling the water away from the windscreen as they try to get some visibility. Clouds of spray, there are back markers to go round, they've got their headlights on, and now the Mercedes is drawing up alongside. Can he possibly find a way round? He can't see, and he has to drop back. Still Peter Cox leads, Bernd Schneider in 2nd place, McLaren versus Mercedes, and now the Mercedes comes back again as they go down towards Beckett's. The Mercedes is on the inside, he can't do it there either. There's no grip. They're going up to 160, 170 miles an hour. The track is awash. They've got absolutely no grip, but Bernd Schneider wants this to be a Mercedes victory. McLaren, who used the Mercedes engine in Formula 1, use a BMW engine in GT racing, and this is really BMW versus Mercedes. They're on the Hangar Straight now, and now this is Bernd Schneider's effort. They're going up to 165, 170 miles an hour in the rain, the windscreen wipers wiping away, and the Mercedes is on the outside. Surely that's not going to do him any good. But as Peter Cox gets on the brakes, the Mercedes goes ahead. The Mercedes leads. Bernd Schneider retakes the lead here at Silverstone, and Peter Cox's McLaren BMW is pushed down to 2nd place, and one of the McLarens has gone off. That is the short-tailed car. That's Gerd Ruch. A big accident. He's gone off at Woodcote. He's perfectly all right. He's stepping over the barriers, but we see it again, and the car went very heavily backwards into the barriers, and I think this race is getting very, very dangerous indeed. I wonder how much longer it can go on. It's oh, there's a Viper going now. That is the class-leading Viper, hard into the not only hard into the bank, it ends up against the McLaren, and now we've got a red flag. And I have to say, I think not before time. So that is looking like a truncated race. That's looking like a Mercedes victory. Celebrations for Stuttgart, a win for Bernd Schneider and for his teammate, Alex Wurz.
Bernd and me, I think we did a good job. We was always on the maximum, on the limit, and it's really, really great for us and for Mercedes.
Well, just minutes later, the faces of the Mercedes pit crew tell a different story. The FIA race stewards declared the finish was a lap before Schneider took the lead, and that means Peter Cox and Roberto Ravaglia take the win. So a rather fortunate victory for the number 9 BMW McLaren. Mercedes in 2nd place, and the first round winners Leto and Soper 3rd this time. Goodwin and Els were unlucky in 6th, but even the winners were amazed when the race was restarted.
When he put out his lights, I could not believe, because the track was in no way conditioned to race. It was very, very dangerous, and I was really surprised because I could hardly keep up with the speed of the pace car. And well, I think everybody saw what happened. You know, it was everybody. I mean, it had nothing to do with driving a racing car. It was very dangerous, and I think we all can be happy that nobody got hurt. And but obviously, I'm very happy with the result.
These are the driver standings with 2 eventful rounds gone. Pierre-Henri Raffinel's 4th place here puts him 3rd overall, but it's the Works Schnitzer BMW drivers dominating. JJ Leto and Steve Soper ahead of the rest, only 3rd in this race, but in the appalling weather, happy just to finish.
I think we were lucky to end up 3rd. I think we got several things wrong. I dropped it when I had a 20-second lead, and I was very angry about that. I think then JJ decided to put slicks on, and as soon as he put slicks on, it started to rain. So I think that was an unlucky move, which cost us duly. And at the end, to come out of it 3rd and still leading the championship, I think we had a bit of luck on our side. So I suppose, really, yeah, fairly happy, but in a very strange way.
And season campaigners like Ray Baum couldn't understand why the race was allowed to continue in such dreadful weather.
I've never seen Silverstone like it. There was gravel offline, I mean massive puddles on the line. You couldn't put the power down the straight. You couldn't see. It was just totally unraceable.
Once they restarted, what sort of visibility did you have in the car?
None. It was quite difficult to pick your way past cars, and the biggest problem was that as soon as you put the power down, the back wheels spun or they picked themselves up on the water. I mean, they should never have restarted the race, basically.
In the GT2 class, the number 51 Chrysler Viper of Gash and Beretta was leading until it flew off at Woodcote. Even so, it was still classed as third. The Porsche of Hurtgen, Elfman and Amarin finished second, with Justin Bell and Tommy Archer snatching victory and the lead in the GT2 championship.
We're really chuffed. I mean, that was a position of luck as well, but we created it, and the team Orica created it. We put ourselves in the right place, we were on the right tyres, and we survived, and that's what counted.
Bernd Schneider's disappointment is clear on the GT1 podium. So close for Mercedes, who thought they pipped Cox and Ravaglia. So a